Today I want to have a look at artificial intelligence and the role that it plays in education and educational research. Going back a little way, during the lockdown I had too much time on my hands, as I suppose we all did, and I decided that I would write myself a program for solving Sudoku problems. You've probably come across Sudoku. It's a puzzle with 81 squares arranged in a 9x9 grid, and some of the numbers are given to you. This is a simple Sudoku I've chosen from the internet, and the puzzle is to complete and fill in all of the squares following certain rules. Each digit 1 to 9 must come in each column. Each digit 1 to 9 must go across each row, and each digit 1 to 9 must be in each of the smaller squares inside the overall puzzle. And as a human being, I come to this problem and I look for patterns. I have a heuristic. Look, there's a 7 here, a 7 there. The 7 in this row can't be here, can't be here. This must be the 7 here. Let's put it in. And I'm filling out the squares following those sorts of patterns. There's a 9 here, a 9 here. The 9 must be one of those two, but I don't know which at the moment. Let me leave that for the time being. And so it goes on. Well, I wrote myself a simple program. Here's a short video of that program in operation. I've fitted these numbers in. I've put them into the grid. And my program, if I press the button at the bottom to say calculate, it will calculate the next round of numbers in the Sudoku. Now, so I started off thinking I'm going to try and get the program to duplicate what I do. I'm going to start thinking about how I look for those patterns. And it soon became clear to me that that's a very difficult thing to reduce to a simple formula. So what I was going to have to do was to find a way of making it easy enough for the program to calculate. And what I started to do was this. I said, imagine in each of these squares where I don't know the number, then there's 9 possibilities. Well, except it can't be a 9 because there's a 9 already in this row. And there can't be an 8 because there's an 8 already in this row. And it can't be a 3. And it can't be a 5. And it can't be a 1 because there's already a 1 in that row. And it can't be a 2 because there's already a 2 in this square. And that leaves me that it's reduced the possibilities here. It's a 4, or it's a 6, or it's a 7. And I could go on through all of these squares, doing that, working out which numbers could possibly fit in that space. And that's how I wrote the program to solve the Sudoku. It goes through each of the squares, working out which of those numbers will be the case. And here, speeding up somewhat, I'm giving you a view of how going through each of those squares in turn, it works out which numbers. And when it gets to the end of the sequence of working out which, there are some squares now which there's only one possibility. There's only this square here can only be a 9. And so I put that 9 in the square and I go through the whole process again, saying, well, if that's a 9, that reduces the probabilities, the possibilities in some of the other squares, and so I can carry on calculating until I've got all of the squares filled up. Well, that's a good solution for easy Sudokus. This is an easy Sudoku. That method that I developed works some of the time. It works on easy Sudokus. It doesn't work on difficult ones. And so at that point, I went off and started reading on the internet about how computer programs are written to solve Sudoku problems. And what I discovered was that actually I'd started in the wrong place. By the way, this is a tip that you might take to heart. Once you've started struggling with the problem, if you then go and read about the problem, you can save yourself some time, because you'll find out that other people have made similar mistakes to you or have taken different directions. You can learn a lot by reading the literature. Now, I'm not sure I'm advising you to read the literature first always, because actually by spending some time sitting and puzzling over the problem, you get fresh insight. When you come to read, you understand the problems that other people are facing. And to solve Sudoku problems properly, to look at the programs that are written to solve them, they use what is called a brute force method. Now, brute force methods simply say, what are the possibilities, 4, 6 or 7 in that first square? Let's try 4, because that's the lowest number, and let's see what implications that has for the other rows along here. So if we just take that top row first, this one's going to be 4, 6, 7, this one 4, 7, this 3, 4, 3, 7, 8, 2, 3, 7, 8, 3, 4, 7. So looking just at that top row, we've got the numbers 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 and 8 to organise along that line. Now if I'm looking at this as a human being, I can see that there's only one square that 6 goes in, and it must be that first one. But the computer doesn't do that. The computer says, let's just try the lowest number first. Let me put the 4 in there. Now if the 4 goes in there, then this is a 7, then this is a 3, then this is an 8, then this is a 2, and there's nothing to go in here because 3, 4 and 7 we've already used earlier on. So I go back to the beginning and I start trying 6. And this is a process of going through each number in turn, maintaining a record of what order you're going through, putting them in sequence to make sure you've covered every possibility until you arrive at the answer that works. And it actually does work. The next one works with the 6 at the beginning, then 4 or 7 here, then try one or the other. Try the 4 first, see what the consequences are for the following squares. When it doesn't work, go back, and we've sorted that one out, come back this far and carry on. That's a technique that's used in computing, and it's known as a bubble sort, and it's very effective. But what you need to understand is that this program, the brute force method, is not using any of the heuristics that a human being would use, not using the approach that a human being would use. It's purely a computer-based solution that will find the right answer. Now, I'd mentioned to you when I did the video in on neuroscience that you can't always tell from the problem that you set to a person what's actually going on in their heads, what methods they're using to think about the problem. Well, that's definitely also true in the case of a computer. You can't tell what problem it's actually solving by thinking about how you would tackle this problem. You're looking at a problem that could be tackled in a number of different ways, and a computer will not necessarily tackle it in the same way as a human being would, and therefore they're not doing the same things. Now, when we come to look at artificial intelligence, you mustn't judge the intelligence of a computer by the intelligence a person uses in solving a problem, because they may not be solving the same problem. I think there's a very interesting illustration of this in the movie AlphaGo, AlphaGo was the first artificially intelligent program that beat a professional Go player. Go's a very complicated game, lots of different options, and eventually this computer program, AlphaGo, was developed to a point where it could beat professional Go players, and they made a movie of the tournament between AlphaGo and one of the best Go players in the world, and AlphaGo beat the human player on a 5-game tournament, beat the Go player 4-1. And it led to an interesting insight. And the interesting insight is that in Go, you place stones on a board in order to occupy space. And a human being uses certain heuristics in the same way as I looked for patterns in the Sudoku. In Go, the human will try to occupy as much space as possible. Now, there's no advantage in occupying a lot of space, and the computer program did not try to occupy as much space as possible. The computer program tried to increase the probability of winning. And winning by a small amount is as good as winning by a large amount. So the goal of the human player and the goal of the computer program were different. And consequently, the computer program was better at playing Go than the human player. That provides a very interesting insight about the way we think. We may be setting ourselves intermediate targets which are actually detrimental to our achieving of our overall goal. So that's, I think, a fascinating insight that is produced by the application of artificial intelligence. But it does mean that you need to recognise that insight was not an insight of AI. It was not the AI that had the insight. It was the human beings who were watching the play who got that insight about what it meant, what the different targets meant in terms of the likelihood of winning the game. Now, in general terms, that means we need to be aware of what the goals of a computer program are, what the goals of a human being are when tackling a similar problem. And in particular, we need to be thinking, I'm trying to put words together here to make sentences that convince you of something that I believe. I believe something, I wish to put it into words, I wish to express it in a way that conveys as clearly as possible what I'm thinking to you, so that you can evaluate and hopefully think the same way as I think. That's not what a computer program, that's not what these AI programs like ChatGPT and DeepSeek are doing. They are trying to write language that sounds like language that other people might have said. They're talking about the plausibility that the sentence holds together as a sentence, irrespective of the meaning. So it's actually if I start a sentence, happy birthday, it's great pleasure to wish you congratulations on your birthday, what's the continuation of that? What's the most likely continuation of that is what the computer could be thinking about. What I'll be thinking about is the person I'm addressing, my relationship to that person, the last conversation we had. I'll be thinking about a whole lot of different things than what are the most probable words to come after that beginning. Imagine try setting ChatGPT to write a sentence that starts, "Dear Grandma." It will write a stereotypical letter to a fictional grandmother with all the sorts of things that a grandchild would say to a grandmother in general. But it won't capture the individual experience of the person who's writing that letter. And so you need to understand that ChatGPT is not setting itself the goal of communicating in the same way as you are setting out to communicate. We, when we set out to communicate, think about our personal history, we think about the audience we're trying to address, the people that we're trying to address, and all of that real world situation figures into the way in which we write. That doesn't figure into a large language model. Large language models are simply asking, what's the probability that these next words will come after those words that we had at the beginning, and how do we make it sound plausible? Now, that means I'm not against AI. If it helps you write better stylistically, there's always been the opportunity in the academic world to use editors. If you use an editor, a person who reads your work and corrects the language in order to make it flow more smoothly, that's fine. That's always been a possibility. But the person who is the author of the ideas remains responsible for the expression of those ideas. It cannot be the case that the person who's editing takes charge of what the ideas are that are being expressed. And it's the same with artificial intelligence. If you use artificial intelligence, you still remain responsible for what the artificial intelligence says. And if the artificial intelligence says something foolish, hallucinates, creates imaginary references, or does any other kind of thing like that, it's you that's responsible. And you need to be able to exercise your judgment to understand when something is important and when it isn't. I was very much struck by a radio program I was listening to the other day about commissioning a new large telescope, and the large telescope was going to be able to photograph large sections of the sky and identify unusual stars and galaxies and pick out areas of the sky of particular interest. And the interviewer on the program said, well, can't artificial intelligence do that for you? And the astronomer's response was, well, yes, artificial intelligence can pick out areas that are unusual, they look strange, but they will pick out areas that look strange for peculiar reasons. They'll think that an area of the sky looks strange because there was light interference from a nearby light. They'll think that the area of the sky is interesting because there was distortion in the lens. The AI will pick out areas of the sky that look different, look unusual, look unexpected. What it can't do is pick out the areas that look unexpected and interesting. Only a person with background in the subject can work out which of those areas is of interest and which is simply an error in the lens, some random reflection of light from a piece of equipment. The interesting areas need to be picked out, selected by human beings. And that's the same with large language models, generating text. It's you, as the person who's putting forward the ideas, whose job it is to say, yes, this piece of text that has been produced by AI expresses what I want to say in an interesting and captivating way. The judgment remains human, and the judgment is crucial to effectively picking out what should be presented. And in education, as examiners, as teachers, we should be looking for the judgment rather than for the detail of the way that the things are expressed. It's the judgment that we should be testing for. We may have to adjust our assessment methods to make sure that we're exercising judgment. And it's not an accident, it seems to me, that AI has all of the faults that social media have, that falsehoods spread faster than truths, that you cannot rely on the accuracy of a statement in social media or in AI without separate verification, because neither social media nor AI are exercising that judgment about the real world context in which statements are being made. Statements are being made in a decontextualized way.